Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive that's all about, well, expanding our minds, or at least our understanding of how others have tried to throughout history, through art. We're talking psychedelic art. And I got a feeling you're not just here for the pretty colors. You sent over a stack of articles, even some podcast transcripts on the topic, so you know the deal. We're talking ancient rituals, iconic 1960s visuals, and even how this is evolving with technology today. And let me tell you, prepping for this deep dive, whew, had me going down some fascinating rabbit holes. For example, did you know that some researchers believe those ancient cave paintings, yeah, the ones everyone knows, might have been inspired by altered states of consciousness too?
It's true. Those cave paintings are a fascinating starting point, though heavily debated, of course. What's so captivating about psychedelic art in general is that it's this visual language for experiences that are notoriously difficult to put into words.
Right, like how do you explain a trip?
Exactly. It's a reflection of inner landscapes, often inspired by substances like LSD or psilocybin, sure, but it also taps into something ancient and universal, a yearning to express the experience of altered states.
Okay, so let's rewind to those ancient connections for a second. We tend to think of psychedelic art as this child of the 1960s, but our sources mention peyote and ayahuasca being used in indigenous cultures for centuries, if not millennia, before that. So what's the story there?
Yeah.
These plants were around long before the Summer of Love.
You're hitting on a crucial point. For many indigenous cultures, these plants, they weren't just drugs in the recreational sense. They were, and still are, considered sacred medicines.
So not just a Friday night kind of thing.
Not at all. They were meticulously prepared and used in specific rituals designed to connect with the divine, to gain spiritual insight, to heal, and the visions, the experiences those rituals brought about, naturally they found their way into art.
So those swirling patterns and vibrant colors we often associate with, say, a Grateful Dead poster, they might have echoes in ancient art forms. I'm picturing those intricate patterns woven into Peruvian textiles, for example.
You've got it. While the styles are obviously different across time periods and cultures, the core impulse, the desire to translate a deeply personal, often indescribable experience into something tangible, that connects them. It's fascinating to see how artists across different eras have grappled with this challenge, making the unseen seen. It's like a thread connecting human experience across millennia.
Okay, this is where my inner art history nerd gets really excited. The 1960s psychedelic art scene. San Francisco, the music, the posters, it felt like a supernova of creativity. What were the key ingredients that made that specific time and place so explosive for this art form?
The 1960s, well, they were a perfect storm, weren't they?
Seems like it.
You had psychedelics entering Western counterculture in a big way, coinciding with a burgeoning art movement pushing boundaries. Suddenly, art wasn't just something you passively observed in a gallery. It was this living, breathing thing integrated into everyday life. And don't forget the music.
Right.
Bands like the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, they weren't just making music, they were creating sonic landscapes that mirrored the psychedelic experience. Their concerts became these immersive, multisensory happenings, and poster art played a huge role in setting the stage.
And those artists, wow. Wes Wilson, Griffin, Victor Moscoso, they weren't just graphic designers, they were visual innovators. Each of them seemed to tap into a different facet of the psychedelic experience.
Absolutely. Wes Wilson, for example, with his iconic, almost melting lettering, he wasn't just trying to be different, he was trying to replicate a specific visual effect. He talked about how LSD made him see letters as fluid, almost vibrating on the page, and he wanted to capture that in his work.
So he wasn't just randomly distorting things. He was striving for visual accuracy in a way. What about Griffin? His work always struck me as more spiritual, mystical, like pulling imagery straight from a dream.
While Wilson focused on lettering, Griffin took a different approach. Griffin was deeply into Eastern mysticism and mythology, and he seamlessly wove that into his art. His posters for the Grateful Dead, especially, became iconic representations of the band's own exploration of mystical themes.
And we can't forget Victor Moscoso. He was the one with the formal art training, right? His use of color was next level, like he was bending light itself.
Precisely. Moscoso brought this incredible technical mastery to the game. He understood color theory inside and out, especially a technique called complementary contrast, basically using opposing colors to create a vibrating object. His posters weren't just visually striking, they were practically pulsating off the page, drawing you into their intricate layers.
It's amazing how they weren't just creating cool images. They were developing a whole new visual language to communicate an experience that's notoriously difficult to articulate. But this exploration of consciousness through art didn't end in the 1960s, did it? Our sources point to a modern master, Alex Grey, as a key figure in how psychedelic art has continued to evolve.
Alex Grey. His work is fascinating because it bridges those classic 1960s psychedelic elements with a more contemporary, almost spiritual, anatomical dimension.
His paintings are incredibly intricate, almost like spiritual x-rays, right? You see the human body, but it's interwoven with energy fields, chakras, like you're peering beneath the surface of reality. It's both beautiful and a little intense.
You've hit the nail on the head. Gray's work doesn't shy away from the complexities of the human experience. He's interested in the interconnectedness of it all, the physical and the spiritual, the seen and the unseen. And this resonates with people from all walks of life, even those who might not consider themselves part of the psychedelic community.
It's like he's created a visual language for the ineffable, for those experiences that words simply can't capture.
Exactly. And that's the power of art, isn't it? It can communicate on a visceral, emotional level, bypassing the limitations of language. You can find Gray's art everywhere, from album covers to meditation spaces, even tattoos. It's become a touchstone for a generation interested in exploring consciousness and spirituality.
It's amazing to think how far we've come from ancient rituals to 1960s counterculture to Alex Gray's intricate visions. But all of these examples, as different as they are on the surface, share this common thread, this desire to express the experience of altered consciousness visually. So let's break it down. If we were trying to decode psychedelic art, what are the defining characteristics, the visual cues that scream psychedelic?
Well, the most immediate giveaway is often the color palette. Think vibrant, often neon-like colors that seem to pulsate and vibrate. Imagine trying to capture the feeling of your senses being heightened, of colors appearing more saturated and alive than ever before.
Right. And it's not just the intensity of the colors, it's how they're used. The rules of traditional color theory almost seem to go out the window.
Absolutely. There's this fluidity and boldness to the color choices in psychedelic art that you don't always see in other movements. It's about pushing boundaries, experimenting, and seeing what happens when you break free from those traditional constraints. Think of it like this. If traditional art is speaking in complete sentences, psychedelic art is like jazz. It's about improvisation, riffing off existing structures to create something completely new and unexpected.
Another thing that stands out is the use of patterns in psychedelic art, right? Intricate, repeating forms, spirals, fractals, those are common themes we see popping up again and again.
Those patterns are fascinating because they reflect something many people report experiencing during altered states. There's this sense of the universe being interconnected, of everything flowing into everything else, and these patterns become a visual representation of that.
It's like those repeating patterns are a visual echo of the interconnectedness they're feeling with the universe. That's a pretty mind-blowing concept to try to translate into visual form.
It is. And it highlights how psychedelic art isn't just about aesthetics. It's about making the intangible tangible, about giving form to something that's often described as being beyond words.
And speaking of communicating the uncommunicable, we have to talk about the symbolism embedded in psychedelic art. There's a whole visual language at play, isn't there? It's like those ancient symbols become activated in a whole new way when viewed through a psychedelic lens.
You're right on the money. You'll often see ancient symbols like mandalas representing wholeness in the universe, or the third eye, symbolizing intuition and spiritual insight, appearing in psychedelic art. These symbols tap into a rich history of mystical and spiritual traditions, but they take on new layers of meaning in this context.
It's like the artists are drawing on this universal language of symbols, this shared human inheritance, to express something deeply personal and yet universally resonant.
Precisely. They evoke a sense of mystery, of something beyond the everyday, which is a big part of the allure of psychedelic art. But what's interesting is that the influence of psychedelic art extends far beyond the artists who explicitly identify with the movement. You see it popping up in all sorts of unexpected places.
That's what I was thinking. It's like those vibrant colors, mind-bending patterns, and that sense of limitless perspective we talked about. It's seeped into our collective visual vocabulary. We see it in everything from abstract art to digital art, even fashion and music videos. It's like this subtle but undeniable influence on mainstream aesthetics.
It's undeniable. Even artists who haven't personally experimented with psychedelics have been influenced by the aesthetic, consciously or unconsciously. It's a testament to how those artists back in the 60s, experimenting with new ways of seeing and creating, cracked open a new way of perceiving the world visually.
It's like they opened a door to a new dimension of artistic expression, and those ripples are still being felt today. And speaking of new dimensions, Let's talk about what's arguably the most exciting frontier in psychedelic art today, the intersection of art and technology. We're talking virtual reality, augmented reality, digital projections. It's a whole new world of possibilities. It's like those early artists who were trying to recreate the subjective experience of a psychedelic trip on a canvas now have a way to bring people inside those experiences.
And not just recreate them, but create entirely new ones. Imagine stepping inside a psychedelic painting, being surrounded by those vibrant colors and swirling patterns, but now they're responding to your movements, to your breath, even to your brain waves. That's what's so exciting about this intersection of art and technology. It's opening up a whole new realm of creative potential for artists to explore consciousness and perception in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades ago.
It's like those psychedelic visions are breaking free from the canvas and coming to life all around us.
In a way, they are. And it's not just about recreating psychedelic experiences. It's about using these tools to explore the nature of consciousness itself, to push the boundaries of what we perceive as real.
Okay, I need to know more, but I think we need to take a quick pause here, let everyone catch their breath and process all these incredible ideas. We've gone from ancient cave paintings to digital projections in the blink of an eye, and we're just getting started.
It's true. We've covered a lot of ground, and we're about to dive into even more uncharted territory as we explore how technology is pushing the boundaries of psychedelic art.
I'm strapped in and ready. So before the break, we were talking about how artists are using VR and AR to create these immersive, interactive experiences. Give us the details. What are some of the specific ways these technologies are being used? And what kind of impact are they having?
One of the most exciting developments is the use of VR to create what some artists are calling empathy machines.
Empathy machine.
Yeah. They're using the technology to recreate what it's like to experience the world from someone else's perspective, including altered states of consciousness. Imagine being able to step into the mind of someone with synesthesia, for example, and experiencing the world where sounds have colors and textures.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like using technology to bridge the gap between subjective experiences to help us understand each other in a whole new way. Are there specific artists we should be checking out who are doing groundbreaking work in this area?
Absolutely. There's an artist named Android Jones who's doing amazing things with VR and psychedelic art. He creates these incredibly intricate, immersive worlds that you can literally walk around in and interact with. His work has this incredible sense of depth and detail, and the way he uses light and color it's just breathtaking.
It's amazing to think that what might have started as a doodle on a notepad during a particularly intense trip can now become this fully realized interactive world that others can experience too. It's like the ultimate form of sharing your reality with someone.
It really is. And it's not just about sharing experiences. It's about exploring the potential of these technologies to alter our consciousness, to help us see the world in new ways. There's a growing body of research suggesting that VR, when used in conjunction with psychedelics, can actually enhance the therapeutic benefits of those experiences.
Okay, now that's fascinating. We often hear about VR being used for things like treating phobias or PTSD, but this is next level stuff. What about augmented reality AR? What kind of possibilities does AR open up for psychedelic art?
AR is interesting because it doesn't transport you to a completely different reality. It layers digital elements onto your existing world. So imagine walking down the street and seeing buildings come alive with vibrant murals or encountering, fantastical creatures blending seamlessly with your surroundings. That's the kind of magic that AR can bring to psychedelic art.
It's like those psychedelic visions are escaping the confines of the canvas and infusing our everyday reality with wonder. I've seen examples of artists using projection mapping to transform buildings into canvases for psychedelic art. It's mind-blowing. What's the story there?
Projection mapping is taking psychedelic art to a whole new level, literally. Festivals like Burning Man have become hotbeds for this type of art, where massive buildings and sculptures become animated with light and color. It's incredibly immersive and creates this amazing shared experience for everyone present. It's like stepping into a collective dream.
Right, and what I love about it is that it takes art out of the gallery, out of this exclusive space, and brings it to the streets, making it accessible to everyone. It's like this democratization of the psychedelic experience in a way.
And it's not just limited to large-scale installations. You see it on a smaller scale, too, with artists using projectors to animate their homes, even their own bodies, with psychedelic visuals.
It's amazing to see how technology is giving artists these incredible new tools to express themselves and to share their visions with the world. But as mind-blowing as these technological advancements are, it strikes me that there's something very human, very intimate about the heart of psychedelic art. It's not just about special effects. It's about exploring the depths of human consciousness.
You've hit on a really important point. For all the technological bells and whistles, at its core, psychedelic art it's deeply personal. Each person's experience of these altered states is unique, informed by their own memories, emotions, and perceptions, and that comes through in the art too.
It's like those fingerprints we talked about earlier. Even though there are these common visual elements we've been discussing, the colors, the patterns, the symbolism, how those elements are combined, how they're interpreted, that's where the individuality of the artist shines through. It becomes this beautiful reflection of the diversity of human consciousness.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes psychedelic art so compelling. It reminds us that there are infinite ways of experiencing the world, infinite ways of seeing and feeling.
And that even though each of us experiences these states individually, there's this shared human desire to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of our perception that connects us all.
It's like we're all explorers, each charting our own course through the vast landscape of consciousness. And psychedelic art becomes a way for us to share our maps, to compare notes, and to learn from each other's journeys.
What I find so hopeful about psychedelic art, especially in the context of all the advancements we're seeing with technology, is that it reminds us of the power of our own minds. We don't need fancy equipment or substances to access these altered states, to tap into our own creativity.
That's such an important point. While psychedelics can certainly be a catalyst for these experiences, they're not the only path. Meditation, mindfulness, even just spending time in nature, these can all be gateways to altered states of consciousness and unlock creative potential.
It's like we all have these incredible tools within us, these untapped reserves of creativity and imagination, and psychedelic art, in all its forms, is a powerful reminder of that potential.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that the mind is a vast and mysterious landscape, and art can be the vehicle that allows us to explore its hidden depths.
So we've gone from ancient rituals to cutting-edge technology, from individual experiences to this idea of a collective consciousness. What a journey. But as with all good journeys, it's time to start looking ahead. What does the future hold for psychedelic art? What uncharted territories are still waiting to be explored?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I think it's safe to say that the psychedelic renaissance is just getting started, and with it, we're going to see an explosion of creative expression.
I'm ready for it. But before we get swept away by the possibilities of the future, let's take a moment to ground ourselves in the present. We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive into the ever-evolving world of psychedelic art. And I, for one, can't wait to see what other wonders await us. Okay, we're back and ready to dive into the future of psychedelic art, which, if our previous conversation is any indication, is going to be a wild ride.
And hopefully a thought-provoking one. We've explored the history, the key figures, the stylistic elements. But I think one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves about psychedelic art is this: what's its purpose? What's its potential?
It's like we've been looking at the map this whole time, tracing the paths of those who have come before us. But now it's time to raise our eyes to the horizon, to imagine where those paths might lead and what uncharted territories are still waiting to be discovered.
What's exciting about this moment in time is that the tools for exploration are more accessible than ever before.
Right.
Technology is evolving at a dizzying pace, opening up new avenues for artists to create and for people to experience art in ways we could only have dreamed of just a few years ago.
It's like those science fiction writers who imagined a future where we could step into other worlds, experience other realities. Through things like VR and AR, those imagined futures are becoming increasingly real.
Precisely. We're no longer limited to static images on a canvas. Now, artists can create immersive worlds, interactive installations that respond to our thoughts and emotions, even experiences that blur the lines between the physical and the digital.
It makes you wonder what happens when those tools are placed in the hands of artists who are specifically interested in exploring consciousness. Can we see the rise of a whole new form of art that's not just about aesthetics, but about facilitating personal growth, transformation, even healing?
That's a really interesting question, and I think we're already seeing glimpses of that potential. There are artists using VR to create environments designed for meditation, for exploring trauma, even for facilitating communication between people who have difficulty connecting in traditional ways.
It's like we're on the cusp of a new era where art isn't just something we passively consume. It's something we actively participate in, something that has the power to change us on a fundamental level. It's almost like the difference between reading about a foreign country and actually traveling there.
I love that analogy. And just like travel can broaden our perspectives and challenge our assumptions, so too can art.
For sure.
Especially art that pushes us outside of our comfort zones, that shows us the world through different eyes, through different states of consciousness.
So where do we go from here? If someone listening to this deep dive right now is feeling inspired, how can they start exploring the world of psychedelic art? Where should they look? What should they experience?
Well, the good news is that there's never been a more exciting time to dive into this world.
I believe it.
Museums and galleries are starting to showcase more psychedelic and visionary art. Festivals and events dedicated to these themes are popping up all over the world.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And then there's the online world, of course, where you can find incredible artists and communities sharing their work and connecting with each other.
It's like we've gone from a time when this kind of art was often relegated to the fringes to a time when it's starting to take center stage. And with good reason, right? We're living in a world that's increasingly complex, fast-paced, and overwhelming. We need art that helps us slow down, connect with ourselves, and remember the power of our own imaginations.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the ultimate message of psychedelic art, that there's more to reality than meets the eye, that our minds are capable of incredible things, and that we all have the potential to tap into a deeper understanding of ourselves and the universe around us.
That feels like a pretty amazing note to end on. So to our listener out there, if this deep dive has sparked something within you, if you're feeling curious, inspired, even a little bit mind-blown, don't just sit there, go explore. Dive into the world of psychedelic art and see what wonders you uncover.
And remember, you don't need a ticket to a gallery or a VR headset to start exploring. The most important journey is the one you take within yourself.
That's it for this deep dive into the world of psychedelic art. We've traveled from ancient rituals to the digital age, from the outer edges of consciousness to the very heart of what it means to be human.
It's been a true pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep those minds open, keep those imaginations firing, and keep exploring the infinite possibilities that lie within and all around you.